We are horrified to report this evening tragic news that is coming from Manipur. Two students have been killed. Photographs that have gone viral confirm the death of these students. In fact, you can see masked men with guns standing right behind them, armed men, I beg your pardon, with guns standing right behind them. In a second photograph, you can, in fact, see their bodies slumped over. Now, these are the pictures. We've, of course, morphed the more graphic elements of these very, very disturbing images. Yet again, images and videos from Manipur are telling the tale of a crisis that is now entering its fifth month. This is in a way personal for us because when we went on the ground to Manipur, the families of these two students were on the streets protesting. And they were among the first reports that I did from the ground in Manipur. At the time, the relatives of the two teenage students, 17 and 20, were convinced that their children had either been killed already or would be killed. And they were standing outside the police headquarters petitioning and pleading with the police, somehow find our children. It's going to be too late. If you don't find them soon, they will be killed. Today, the worst fears of those family members that we met on the streets of Imphal have come true. And yet the families have still not got the bodies of their children back. The news of the death of these children, these teenage children, has been confirmed to the families from these viral photographs. We do not know who has taken these pictures and in fact placed them in the public domain. The larger context, of course, is that the crisis in Manipur is now entering its fifth month. The ban on mobile internet has only just been lifted, and we should brace ourselves for the fact that many more sort of stories of the trauma that the people of Manipur have undergone in the last few months may now emerge as data becomes accessible to more people to tell their stories. To talk about the larger situation and also the horror of this particular incident, let me introduce our guest on the program today. I welcome Dr. Malem Ningthouja to the program. He is a well-known researcher, an academic, and an author. Thank you very much, Dr. Malem, for joining us. I want to start by, I don't know if it's correct or appropriate to even say, what are your feelings? Because what could anyone's feelings be? You think of two young people who went out to get a tuition according to their families, and the photos, several months later reveal their bodies slumped over in a forest. In one of the photographs, you can see armed men with guns standing just behind these two young people, a boy and a girl. But the families that I met of these teenagers, they knew or they feared this would happen, and it's happened. And we're in the fifth month of this crisis. We don't know exactly when this happened. So I just want your thoughts on the overall situation looking at this tragedy.
Thank you, Barkha, for inviting me. First, I would like to say that I am not legitimate enough to represent the pain and suffering felt by the families of the victims. But as a father, and as a husband, and as a citizen, I know what would have happened if my son or daughter or children were being killed in such a cold-blooded manner. And see, I am from Manipur. I love my people, be it Naga, Meitei, Kuki, Bengal, whichever. And for the last 5 months, horrible incidents have been happening due to the uncontrolled violence occurring in my place. I can feel and sense the feelings of anger, humiliations, hatred, deprivations, loss, and suffering of my people. Well, this incident tells the other stories of how a cold-blooded murder took place to the innocent and the vulnerable sections of the populations, and it has affected everybody. It's unlike a mob or a riot where like collateral damages usually happens because of the armed classes or the riots or the mobs, whatever it is. But this particular incident tells us the stories of abductions, hatred, cold-blooded murder. These stories also tells us and expose the industry of lies, where uh, the propagandist of the industry of lies tries to depict everything and blame the entire episode to one particular community. This particular incidents and the photograph speaks voluminously about how the violence and the hatred have affected everybody across communities. According to my report from the police, the abduction took place on 6th, and presumably they were tortured. And according to this report, the boy was murdered on 8th, and the girl was murdered on 11th. And there are incidents of serious sexual violence on the body of the woman before being killed. And so, like, we all can feel what will obviously happen when
The
these helpless people have been
the
caught.
body the bodies, we were told, have not come back to the families. Has that changed? Have the bodies come back to the families, in your knowledge?
No, not yet. I heard today that police are in carrying out some kinds of operations to trace out the culprits, or also to identify the bodies and to find out where this burial took place. See, one, there was
The details that you mentioned, I just want to understand them, because you've said that the boy was murdered on the 6th of July. You're talking about July, right, sir?
both were
Dr.
abducted on
Malem?
6th. Both
Yes.
were abducted on 6th, and reportedly the boy was murdered on 8th, and the girl was murdered on 11th. This is what I get
Yes.
from the
Yes,
police.
and you have also said that you believe that sexual violence was inflicted on the young woman, and I want to understand, is the police saying that? Is the police officially saying that? Are the families saying that? I just want to understand a little more.
The report says that the girl was sexually harassed before being killed. They must have prepared the report based on the reliable information they have been able to gather. They were able to gather the report because, fortunately or unfortunately, the mobiles could be traced,
Hmm.
and it took place somewhere at Zaugangtak Kuki village in Chichura district, most probably. And the police could trace the locations of the mobile phones where the replaced SIMs was being used. In fact, it was the mobile held by the girl. So it's the police report which clearly says that the girl was sexually harassed consecutively for 3-4 days, 5 days. If she was abducted on 6, then the murder took place on 11. This is what the police says.
Right. He says that the boy was killed before the girl, and the girl was sexually abused before she was also killed.
Report says.
The report is the police report, sir. Sorry, I just don't want to get any
Yes,
facts
yes,
wrong,
yes.
which is why I'm being just very
Yes,
careful.
it's the intelligence report.
It's the intelligence report. All right. The intelligence report. Now, when you said that there is an industry of lies, and there are propagandists, when you have a crisis of the kind that we have in Manipur, where two communities are at odds with each other, every time I, as a non-Manipuri, talk to one or the other community, both use this phrase. Both say that there's propaganda against their community. Both say that they are being lied about. As a scholar, sir, and as you said in the beginning, that you love your people irrespective of whichever community they come from. How do we bridge this divide today? How do we bridge the divide in the face of so much human suffering? Whether it is what has happened to these two young people, or whether it is what happened to the women in the original, or the first viral video that leaked, rather, who are from the other community, from the Kuki community. These teenagers are from the Meitei community. I want you to talk a little bit about that.
Number one, I believed in progressive journalism that takes no sides blindly, that plays no fifth columnist roles and propagandist and the partisan roles. I believe that progressive journalists can produce facts, but unbiased narratives, unbiased uh, misreporting, and etc. Number one, because information is very much important to find out the truth. And when I say about industry of lies, I feel that there are certain bodies or the institutions, it could be from the journalism sections or whatever it is, that are repeatedly providing misinformed narratives, at the same time fabricating facts. And you are aware of some of the controversies that has come out. I don't want to name it now. But I think it has done quite injustice. It merely helps in blaming one another and aggravating the situation. So, if in order to bridge the gap, we need neutral bodies, progressive journalists, and individuals and organizations who understands the situations and the context, analyze it scientifically, and try to press upon the government to come up with the most constructive and the progressive solution so that peace is restored, the victims are adequately relieved and rehabilitated and resettled, instead of trying to fish in the muddy waters and carry on propagandist kind of the advances for their own sectarian and narrow political gains. Unless these big peoples who can influence opinions and who can even influence policies take up such proactive progressive roles, I think
Yeah.
situation is going to be aggravated further, to the
Dr. Malam,
worst.
I have more questions for you, but I want to play out a very short excerpt from the time that I met with the families of these two teenagers. And you have just said to us that you have shared more details than we had. We've been, of course, trying to reach their families from Delhi, but they must be so devastated. We've not been able to speak with them directly yet. But we did meet them when they were protesting on the streets. They were out on the streets and they were asking for action. And this was in August. And at that time, too, they had expressed the fear. The women of the family had expressed the fear that their children may not come back home. So I just want to play a little excerpt also to capture the passage of time. We are now at the end of September, and these teenage children were abducted on the 6th of July. Do watch this.
डॉक्टर वही ने आना नहीं वाले
बहुत अपसेट थी आंटी। आप बता दीजिए वो क्या कह रही थी।
वो कह रही थी 6 तारीख से वो ट्यूशन में गया था वो लड़का, वो लड़की डॉक्टर बनना चाहते हैं। वो फैमिली का जो एस्पेक्ट था वो डॉक्टर बनेगा और हमारा घर का नाम रोशन करेगा, ऐसे ही सोचता रहा। ये बहुत अच्छा लड़का है, लड़की है। और वो बता रहे हैं वो ट्यूशन के लिए गया है, ऐसे ही गए से कुकी लोग ने अरेस्ट किया है, कुकी लोग ने पकड़ कर रखा है, वही बता रहे हैं। फिर भी वो लोग ऐसे ही बच्चा, दोनों बच्चा जिंदा रहो, घर में वापस रहो, वही बोल रहा है अभी।
Just a small clip where you capture the dreams of this girl who wanted to be a doctor. These two teenagers, this family said, had just gone for a tuition. The anguish and the pain in those tears. It was really heartbreaking to talk to these women, and I can't even imagine what they must be feeling today. Dr. Malem, my question to you is, where do we go from here? Manipur is or even fallen off, unfortunately and tragically. The national media headlines that anyway weren't doing a much focused job, except with some honorable exceptions, but for the people of Manipur, this is month 5 of this crisis. Are things better? I know it's a strange question to ask on a day when we get news of these children, and now we have, by the way, children leading street protests today. There are school children on the streets, and if we can play those images as well. But Dr. Malem, go ahead.
From divisions, we create wholeness. From disturbances, we have to overcome the situations and bring normalcy. Citizens, affected peoples, progressive sections have various roles to play. But I held the government accountable for all these things on the grounds that they have got enough resources, manpower, and intelligence to resolve this issue. It seems to me that the people in the power, the machineries, seems to be playing with certain geopolitical tactics to aggravate the situations with a larger geopolitical goal. I will not be able to elaborate these things too long in this short interview, but since the government is fully responsible for this, and then the situation is aggravated by its proxy elements, radical sections who has less concerns for humans' dignity and peace and order, but very sectarian and chauvinist sections from across the communities who are largely responsible for igniting these situations, playing into the game being orchestrated and designed for them by the big powerful forces. It will take time for people to realize these things. But people like me and you who want to overcome the situations must magnify our democratic concerns so that peoples unite across the communities and across the regions and to press upon the government to use its intelligence, its power, its nexus, everything to bring normalcy of the situation
When
as soon as possible.
when you say you hold the government responsible, do you mean the state government? Do you mean the central government? Do you mean both?
When I say state, the Manipur government functions as a subset of the entire big Indian state. When I say government, I'm telling you about the entire system, entire government, which also includes the central government and its agency, the Manipur state government.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Dr. Malem, when you have a situation where children are no longer safe, so whether it is these two teenagers who have been killed, whether before that there was a half Kuki, half Meitei baby who was killed when he was traveling with his mother in an ambulance, or there are child combatants, there are children holding guns, and you have the civilian population armed. When even children are not safe in a crisis, why do you think there hasn't been more urgency shown in Manipur?
Maybe some peoples are benefiting from this violence and disturbances. It could be one of the reasons that we are not able to bring immediate solutions. At the same time, peoples who are not able to see a peaceful solutions are, being compelled to drag into this conflict because of the prevailing disturbance situations. There can be many multiple factors for this. But I think every crisis come to an end for various reasons. We have seen many great wars in the world, and we have seen series of communal classes in Manipur, starting from the 1950s, and then in 1992 to 96, 97, 93. But things, after lots of casualties, people realized and resettled. And the present crisis, which have started from the 3rd May, is another episode. Compared to the long-lasting clash between the Nagas and the Kukis from 1992 to 96, it means it's still the short interval. Yes, short interval. It's not long. It's a short period. I am not glorifying this crisis, but I'm only saying that there has to be some solutions, and obviously, solution will have to come. And that's what I believe in.
So let me ask you in the end to give your prescription, as it were, for how to move from this sort of de facto, division. I want to use the word. It's a de facto, not a de jure, but a de facto division where today cookies are afraid to come into Imphal and Maitis are afraid to go to Churachandpur. It's a kind of invisible line. Highways are blockaded. Both sides are, they'll still say some of our best friends. The cookies will say some of my best friends are Maitis. The Maitis will say some of my best friends are cookies. And yet, politically, the division is so deep today that very few people are talking across the divide. How do we begin talking across the divide? How do we begin to make suffering not a competitive sport?
See, violence has to stop. Any kind of armed aggression has to be stopped temporarily if we really want peace. For this message has to be uh, reaching to the peoples who are engaged in this conflict. And from the Meitei side, they will obviously say that the armed cookie aggressions on the vulnerable village should be stopped. Otherwise, we will not retaliate. They are saying that their action is one of retaliations. Number two, government should rethink the suspension of operations. And since Modi ji, the Home Minister, has promised that it will handle the situation in the cookie-dominated areas, it should prove it by work and deed, and government knows the sentiment of the two groups, and they should try to implement this interest without compromising the prospect of living together, coordination and progress. So the priority should be stopping the violence. Number two, relief and resettlement. Peoples who want to go back has to be resettled with foolproof security. Likewise, communication has to start it. A government should clear the national highways from any kind of obstructions. Blockages and extortions on the highways should be stopped. We are aware of the fact that extortion in the cookie dominated areas, particularly on the routes passing through the national highways, have been repeatedly harassed and blocked, and huge monies is being collected, which are in fact suspected to be using to this war politics. So all this has to be stopped. Arms should be uh, there has to be,
Confiscated.
yes,
Yeah, a
confiscated.
disarming.
Plus, sources of arms has to be obstructed, and that should be the first step. And secondly, confidence building, relief, rehabilitations, has to take place, and gradually security have to be provided to any vulnerable sections, to any vulnerable areas, sensitive areas. Likewise, gradually it may take time, but people's confidence will obviously develop. There are many people who still want to live together, and this kind of people would be, majority in number, but their voice have been suppressed. So the suppressed voices of the democratic peoples who believed in a progressive Manipur has to be promoted. Their voice has to be rise up, and their aspirations has to be fulfilled through government's initiatives. Plus, gradually, if these things takes place, then obviously, civil society organizations and etc. could
Yes.
jump in. But when there is guns everywhere, it's difficult for civil society organizations to penetrate.
Absolutely. Dr. Malem, thank you. And also thank you for being a voice of reason and asking for peace and dialogue, but also a disarming of those who have weapons and should not have them. I think that is a very important part of where we go from here. But in the meantime, our hearts go out to the families of those two teenagers who were abducted in July and killed at gunpoint. Photographs revealing that horror, their bodies yet to come home to their families. Thank you very much, Dr. Malem Ningthouja, for talking to us and to our audience. We'll keep tracking the Manipur story. Thank you for watching. Take care.
Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.